If you guys want one-on-one training, online training, or nutritional coaching, please head on over to my website, jpfitnesspro.com. Just go to the services tab and select which one you would like. You can also subscribe to my newsletter and contact me through my website as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks. What is up, you guys? JP here. The overhead press. I think it's a really underrated movement, and I think it's one of the best movements you could do for overall upper body strength and just physique development. If you want big shoulders, I really suggest you do the overhead press. If you want a strong bench press, I really recommend you include overhead press into your workout routine. But telling you guys how good the overhead press is not the topic of today's video. The topic of today's video is telling you guys one tip to help you improve your overhead press. It's correcting a mistake that I consistently see on overhead press with people that I work with just starting out, or just, I guess, people in the gym in general. To kind of preface this, because I got to talk about another subject, is internal and external rotation. You guys have probably heard this in a lot of other YouTube videos. I'm definitely not the only one to talk about the rotator cuff, but the rotator cuff is what is the prime mover for internal and external rotation. So there's also other muscle groups that do help with that. Like, for example, the chest is one of the chest's functions is internal rotation of the humerus. But just specifically talking about the rotator cuff, we have the subscapularis, which is on the anterior portion of your body, which internally rotates the shoulder. So that will be internal rotation or internal rotation. And then for external rotation, we have the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus, and the teres minor. These are three muscles located right around this area on your upper back. And that's external rotation and then external rotation. So training your rotator cuff is just something that everyone should do. I did a video about this about a week and a half ago with 4 exercises that are going to help you strengthen your shoulder, which is going to help promote a good shoulder health, and it's going to help you with all your pressing movements in general. But just working on them is going to help strengthen them, but you also have to be mindful of internal and external rotation in other exercises, which I'm going to go over right now. So the overhead press. When you're doing the overhead press, when you unrack the bar, you need to pay attention to your forearm placement and how your forearm is angled in relation to your body in the bar. What happens is, and the mistake that I see is when people are doing overhead press, they unrack the bar and their forearms are not straight up and down. Now, I'm not saying that your forearms have to be straight up and down during the overhead press, but what they shouldn't be doing is they should not be slightly leaning forward. What that's doing is just how I showed you a little bit ago, is when your forearms from this position are slightly leaning forward, you have a little bit of internal rotation going on there. And what that does is 2 things. Is one, when you're doing overhead presses, you're doing a lot more weight for an overhead press versus weight that you can move with an internal or external rotation alone. If you do an isolation exercise for internal or external rotation, it doesn't matter which one, you're not going to be able to do that much weight. If you've ever done any movement like this where you take a dumbbell and you come and do external rotations, or you do internal rotations, which would just be the other direction, you're not moving that much weight. You're moving maybe 2.5 pounds, 5-pound dumbbells, 10-pound dumbbells. You're not moving more than 20 pounds. And if you are, you're either someone, a very small portion of the population, or you're probably using momentum with bad form. But in general, is we don't want too much weight on our on an external or internal rotation, which an overhead press for you is going to be a lot of weight. So what happens is when you have your slightly angled forward forearm, you're now putting this much load, whatever load you're using on an overhead press, you're putting that resistance on an slightly internally rotated shoulder, which we do not want. So again, when you unrack the bar, if you see the bar right here, my forearms are straight up and down. Well, what happens is sometimes people won't pay attention, or they're just a beginner and they don't know exactly what they're doing, is they have a slightly, if you see my forearms, they're slightly leaned forward, a slightly internally rotated shoulder. Again, an internally rotated shoulder under extreme loads is not a good idea. You can completely destroy your rotator cuff in your shoulder in the process, leading to months and months and months of rehabilitation, shoulder surgery, all types of things. So the first reason why we don't want that slight lean of our forearms, again, I'll show you guys again, is so you either want forearm straight up and down, or you want a slight external rotation, just a very, very slight, but you do not want any internal rotation. So no forward leaning of your forearms in this position. The second reason why you don't want to do that is because what happens is the further the weight is from the joint that's working, that means there's a greater moment arm, which is going to lead more torque on that specific joint. For example, if I were to take this bar and I were to unrack it and I were to keep going like this, like this, like this, like this, the further I get away from my elbow and my shoulder with the weight, it's going to be harder and harder to hold. So I know that was an exaggeration, but when you're doing an overhead press, if you have a slight leaning forward of your forearms, what that's going to happen is it's going to make the exercise unnecessarily difficult. So you're just making it harder on yourself for no reason. So if you want to increase performance, protect your shoulder, and lift more weight in general, again, try to avoid this tiny bit of internal rotation down here that sometimes I'll see people have. Get your elbows directly under the bar or slight external rotation. I prefer slight external rotation for me, just very ever so slightly, because again, it puts the weight more over my center of gravity. But if you prefer to just have your forearm straight up and down, that's fine. When you have a slight external rotation, it's going to get a little bit more direct work on your triceps, because there's now that little bit of moment that's created when you go a little bit backwards. But not to make it overly complicated, just try to have your forearms straight up and down when you're doing it, and don't have that slight lean. If you guys have any questions, comments, please post them down below. I'll see you guys in the next video.